Welcome back. It's Frankie Boyer, Biz Talk Radio. And so the national ban on evictions is gone, and a more targeted moratorium on evictions and is in legal limbo. And what does it all mean? What does it all mean? Because there are billions of dollars waiting to be distributed. I can't understand any of this, so I thought it would be interesting to welcome the founder and owner of New York City-based law firm Outerbridge Law, Altagracia Pierre-Outerbridge. Welcome to the program. It is such a pleasure welcoming you. As a landlord's attorney, you protect landlords' property rights. As a tenant's attorney, you defend against unnecessary evictions. And there seems to be this dichotomy going on. Explain to us what the heck is happening.
All right. Hi, Frankie. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So there is a lot happening. There are at least $25 billion owed in rent, right? This is a major, major crisis. It's part of setting, the economy rebounding. Tenants have not been able to pay rent. Landlords have not been able to pay their taxes, right? So both sides are pretty upset, pretty angry. There's about $47 billion, 46.5 exactly, in emergency rental assistance that has not been distributed. As of June 2021, more than 40 states had not disbursed, right, more than 10% of the funds. So while the money's there from the federal government, the states have not, and the counties and the cities have not distributed, leaving both sides very, very upset.
Yes. I mean, if you're a landlord and you have taxes that need to be paid and you haven't been paid in a long time, it's a burden on you. And yet families, because of the pandemic, haven't been able to pay the rent, and now they're being evicted. And it's just a mess.
It's an absolute mess. The system that's set up right now to actually welcome applications from folks who are eligible for these applications, the system falls apart. The system has, at least in New York, the system has had many glitches. There are language barriers that prevent the most vulnerable from applying, technology barriers. So it's really not set up for the most vulnerable people who actually would need to use it.
If you are listening to this and is it too late for anyone to apply at this time?
No, this is really the time. This is really the time as the moratorium has been extended. The national now limited moratorium has been extended till October 3rd. States are under tremendous pressure from the federal government and from the public really to actually distribute these funds as fast as possible. We know that in New York, the state has hired outside contractors to make this process better and more streamlined. We know the Treasury Department has published simplified eligibility forms. We know that more people are working behind doors, right, in the state agencies to actually distribute this money. So everyone's on high alert because October 3rd is coming soon enough.
The residents, there is help. The commercial side, is there help as well?
Well, I would call that the PPP, right? Maybe I'll come back again, but no. So the ERAP is really residential. The PPP was meant to help the commercial tenants in terms of paying their employees, paying their rent. And
you're in the thick of this. This is what you do every day, dealing with landlords and tenants. And let me ask you a question. How is this new Delta variety going to affect what's happening, if it will affect anything that's happening right now?
Well, I think maybe we're not seeing the end. I think it very much will affect it. I don't think we're seeing the end of this moratorium. I think as the numbers rise, the moratorium may be extended, especially as the holidays roll up on us after October 3rd. So I think we're just beginning to see the extraordinary powers of the executive, right, and the legislative in terms of this health emergency. I think this is really not the end. I think There will be more creative solutions to extend the moratorium. Maybe it'll become more and more limited as time goes on. Both sides will outcry over this, but I don't think October 3rd is really the end of the story. I'll also say that the courts, there is a pseudo moratorium as the courts are becoming more and more backlogged, right? Folks are filing cases. At least in New York, cases are being filed. But what is stopped by the moratorium is the actual locking of your doors by the city marshal or the sheriff and the actual changing of your locks. So cases are being filed. So at the end of this moratorium, there is a pseudo moratorium, which is the backlogging of the courts in terms of the same number of judges dealing with more and more cases, right? So there's another moratorium coming that's an administrative moratorium at the end of all of this.
In your opinion, and I just want to talk about what are the rights of, let's talk about what the tenant's rights are first and then what the landlord rights are. So if you're renting in an apartment and you're a tenant at will, so there's no lease, do you have any rights at all?
Absolutely. So most states have outlawed self-help eviction. So landlord still has to go to court and prove that they're entitled to an eviction, a judgment for possession, we call it, at least in New York, a writ of possession. So that doesn't come from the landlord wishing it or the landlord wanting it. The landlord has to go to court and prove their case, prove that they are the landlord, right? Prove that you are a tenant or a squatter or an invitee or licensee. Prove the status of the person they're suing. Prove that rent is owed. Prove that there was a lease. Right, there are elements that they have to prove, and that the lease expired, right? That the tenant doesn't have a right to a renewal, and the tenant gets to put in defenses. In some cases, there are less defenses than in other cases, right? But maybe the tenant will say, I'm entitled to live here, right? You told me that that my lease, is as long as I needed it to be. We had an agreement, right? So, and in the end, if the landlord is successful in proving the elements of in New York, we call it their prima facie case, then the court will issue a judgment of possession, which would result in a warrant that the marshal will then execute on. So tenants have tremendous rights in terms of stopping their evictions.
And if it were not a pandemic, and let's just say that you're having problems paying your rent or your landlord is not taking care of the property, what channels do you have at that point?
Absolutely. Many, many channels. At least in New York, we have the Department of Buildings who will act if the place is dangerous. We have HPD. So there are many, many city agencies and state agencies that are whose mission it is to protect the public from, collapsing buildings, from buildings that are in disrepair. Sometimes in New York, the city will take over the building and actually do the repairs and bill the landlord. Here you can call 311, which is a number for repairs, and say, I have these repairs. The city will come out, right? You can, in most states, you can withhold rent to force the repairs to be done. You can deduct from the rent. So the tenants have many, many, many ways to get the repairs done. They may also do the repairs and deduct, as I just said.
Yes. So there have been many landlords who did not give any breaks to anybody during the pandemic. I know of a friend that she has a small little business in Boston, and she went to the landlord and said, I had to close for 3 months. Can you do something with the bill? And they said, no, we can give you a payment plan, but we can't take any money off your bill. And so she is leaving, and she gave them plenty of notice, but she's walking away because she decided she did not want to be in that kind of a situation where this landlord was not very gracious nor wanting to help in any way. It's a tough situation because landlords want to pay their bills, but I think it's too bad that both parties cannot work together.
Absolutely. I think in the end, commercial tenants also have tremendous power. At least in New York, if the tenant was personally liable as a guarantor on the lease, there was a period of time through June where the landlord could not go after the guarantor personally. So the landlord would be left with solely going after the corporation. If the corporation had no money, then the landlord had no real recourse for those months. So some states have implemented those. We have advised some tenants to not pay and wait for the courts to make certain decisions about, impossibility of contract. i.e. the commercial tenant could not open, right? The pizza store could not open, the nail salon could not open. And since this is a pandemic that no one expected, there's not a lot of case law yet as to what the court will decide. So as time goes on and these cases go through the court system, we'll have more clarity on how the courts view these contracts, these commercial leases, and how they apply this.
Oh, thank you so much for being with us. Give us the best website, please.
Sure. Outerbridgelaw.com. And our number is 877-Outerbridge.
Wonderful. Best of luck. Keep us posted. Come back and keep us posted on where we are. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll be back in just a moment. Frankie Boyer, stay tuned. Biz Talk Radio.